story that must be told. Here's a little story that must be told. Here's a little story. Here's a little story.
Take what? My name is Khingz. I'm from South Seattle, and I'm an emcee and a teacher and a father. The year I was born is the same year the Sugar Hill Gang dropped their first ever commercial rap single or whatever. And so, I don't actually remember a time pre-hip-hop. DJ Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince have this song called Parents Just Don't Understand. To all the kids all across the land, there's no need to argue, parents just don't understand. And it was the first song as a kid where I heard a song was about something that I understood. He was talking about something I got. I was like, yo, my mom really doesn't understand. And it made me very excited. So I wanted to do that. So, I started freestyling that day. The day that I saw that video, I started freestyling. Again, it was being a kid and thinking that's just what they did. I didn't even know about really how these shot videos, but I just thought they put on some music, he said some words, and they captured it, and that was it. This is a plant. Lives in the dirt. It's hella lazy. It never goes to work. And then I went on from that. In that particular instance, it was about the subject matter. It was the fact that it was about something I could relate to. And it was the first song that I related to, in my life. It always felt like the music was relevant to me. It was right when I started noticing, neighborhoods are different. They're not all the same. That's mid-late 90s in my teenagers. So even before that, middle school, when I got introduced to we'll call it the streets. That's right about when gangster rap started blowing up. And I was that's when all these dudes from LA and Chicago moved out here and all that stuff started happening in Seattle. And so it always seemed like whatever was going on was super relevant. In my early 20s, there was a lot more talking about what you wear and the streetwear brands that were cracking back then and that's what I was into. It just always seemed to keep going. Even now, as I get into my 40s, there's rappers that are my age that are putting out stuff that's still relevant to how I'm feeling. There's going to be at some point some 90-year-old dude rapping about what it's like to be expecting to die soon. And it's going to be a crazy album. The way that the South End works is there's really, really poor parts, kind of poor parts, middle class parts, some rich parts, and they're kind of across the street from each other. You and someone you're close to can have very different economic means, and then it's also really diverse. You know what I'm saying? So my neighborhood across the street was Cambodian, and then there's the Samoans that lived down the street, and there's the Filipino homies that lived over there, and then there's a whole Jewish family up in this block, and we was all in here. It was easy to recognize how connected America is to other countries when you have all your homies or their parents or something, or even to the South, because most of the black folks was either had just moved from Louisiana or their mom or their grandparents did. And so there's a sense of connection to here, but also being connected to other places for a lot of us. And I think that shaped me politically a lot. As far as hip hop goes, for me in particular, I got into hip hop as a culture, I want to say closer to my freshman year of high school. Before that, it was just gang culture, and my rapping was gangster rap. That's what I did. I was really good at it. And again, I wasn't writing a whole lot. I was mostly just freestyling with my friends. So I went to this thing at CAY, which at the time was super dangerous because I'm from the South End and it's literally on Yesler. So me and my homie, I used to always drag my homie out there with me because it was going down a lot back then. But I got there and they let me make a beat and I got to record for the first time, and that put it in my head, oh, this is how this actually works. And from that point on, I started actually trying to write songs and figuring out how I could record myself. But like I said, I was just in the hood chilling. I got good grades and I got little privileges to be able to go places with that, but I was just with the homies. And then this guy George Yasutake and his family moved in at the end of the street that I was on. His dad and his uncle were old school Japanese jazz musicians. They were fire, and they would just be playing in the house sometimes. They're a very musical family, and they moved in, and he at Garfield had been a part of a crew that used a live band to make hip hop, the Roots. I had a friend named Chris Chin who was friends with them, and me and him were hanging out, and he heard me freestyle. He's like, oh, you got to come see the homies. And he came to my house. He was like, dang, you live just down the street. So he took me around there, and I met all these guys. When the homie got a car, we would just drive around listening to records like for hours. But it was through them that I really got into not just hip-hop as a culture, but music. Like, my homeboy Drew was into everything. He was like the new wave head. He was like, his favorite band was Duran Duran. And he put me on to so many different like kind of sounds. Really shaped my my taste in music. Most of Tribal went to Garfield. So at one point in time, I had in my head that if you wanted to rap in Seattle, you had to go to Garfield. Like, even the cover for Do the Math was a room in Garfield. You know what I mean? So it was like, oh, you got to go there. The guys in our band was like our main bass player, Evan. He was in that. Evan Barnes was a huge part of me and my musical taste as well. He was one of the mainstays of Maroon Colony and Anonymous there from the beginning. Cliff was there. George, Drew Woods, A-Sun was there. It was good. At one point, I remember the homegirl Shasta was in there. Oh my God. My homeboy from Nathan Hale, he went to Garfield, but his best friend Lawrence went to Nathan Hale. He died our senior year, my junior year of school. He got killed. I remember that messed up. Like, A-Sun was super messed up over that. I had just met him that summer, and it was whack. But that was kind of a thing, too, that kind of bonded us together. Right around my senior year of high school, we got into this, we were doing shows pretty regularly at that point. And something about being able to do regular shows, like, I still didn't think it was a job. I still didn't think it was like something I was going to want to do, you know. But it was fun. I liked the group of guys I was with. None of them were pushovers, but none of them were set tripping. They wasn't out trying to cause mayhem and destruction like some of my other friends were. I don't know. There were certain parts of me that I could be with them that I couldn't be with other places. I still had to bide my time between both groups, but it was concurrent with learning more about myself. So, like, as I'm having conversations with everybody about like what it means to be a black man in America, I'm also at the same time realizing like the different ways to express myself using, and the different things that I can express using my words. I'm a pretty private person, and I can be kind of have a lot of social anxiety, always since I was a little kid. And rapping was a place where I could instantly feel like I belonged. So, like, the two things where I felt like I belonged, where people wanted me unconditionally, was like in the gang, or it was with these guys doing this. And I enjoyed them both. And I'm like, I'm trying to push them both. The more that I learned about myself, and the more that I questioned myself, and the more I developed and grew, the better I got at rapping, because they were so entwined. My freestyles, I would like often kind of record a freestyle and then listen back to what I'm saying and be saying stuff to myself or that I didn't catch when I was rapping it, but it meant something and it had me thinking on it. And a lot of times it helped me understand what I was actually feeling versus what I was trying to project that I felt. I've never really wanted to make freestyling a big part of my artistry because it's so personal, but because of that social anxiety, 80% of the time growing up, being on stage, I forget what I was going to say. So I would freestyle because you just get up there and you look out. There's a bunch of people staring at you, and all of a sudden the first word of that record is not popping in your head anywhere. So you just freestyle. And I did that for so long before I really like started figuring out how I could lock it down, that it became a part of what I do. Freestyling is like, it's like this. It's like you start off rapidly having to put these puzzles together, like playing Tetris, but it's super quick. And so there's a challenge to it that's really exciting. And every time you lock a puzzle piece in and it rhymes and it makes sense, it's like, it feels crazy. But then there comes this part where you just stop playing the game and you take your hands off the controller, and then the game itself is just putting itself together in front of you. Almost like I stood outside my body and I'm just like watching and I'm just listening. And I'm not consciously thinking of anything that's coming up, but those are usually the best parts. And I think freestyle has been a huge factor in me facing myself and actually being committed to being a better person. Especially as a young male, there's a lot of projection of how I'm supposed to feel and identifying with the projection of what it's supposed to be and ignoring what you're actually feeling. And I think as I got better at rapping, it allowed me more and more to understand how I was actually feeling and then to respond to things in a more authentic way as opposed from this projection. And as the time went by, I was able to let the projection go. Learning about, like, say, police brutality, learning about our place in the country, learning about like women's studies, learning about Palestine, learning about like the history of Cambodia and American imperialism in general in Southeast Asia. Like all of these things were about me learning about me, really, because all of these things were affecting how I was growing up here. You know, it looked like everyone else in the city was having this really chill Seattle 90s where they was just like listening to grunge, and then me and my friends were dying for no reason. Like it didn't add up. And without understanding the whole different dichotomy of how we got here, it just didn't make sense, and it kind of fueled my, like, I don't know, self-sabotage sometimes. I went by a bunch of names. I started off with my little gang name, but I didn't want to keep that because I didn't want to be associated with that when I was like doing shows. And when I'm doing this music that's not even gangster rap anymore, I didn't want to be associated with it. So I came up with another name and another name and another name. The homies gave me nicknames. And probably the one I went with the longest was Khalil Crisis. I think it was also indicative of me being like stuck between two worlds and trying to and literally being in crisis mode throughout my entire like whatever life at that point. I was at my house and I was listening to beats. This beat that Bean One. He used to live down the street from me when I had where I was living at the time. And we started connecting, and he would come over and we played Dynasty Warriors and like go over to his house and we like make music and stuff. And I used to kick it. And I was listening to his beats and I fell asleep. And in the dream, I had this whole dream about being like in this like old school like rock quarry, like, you know, they have like prisoners, and it's me and a bunch of these people, and we're smashing these rocks, and we all got all these chains on, and like we're miserable. And then two things hit me on my head. One is like this really dingy, messed up crown. It looks like crap, like someone had kicked it for like 40 miles. And then there was one that looked really nice. The nice crown was handed to me from my ancestors, and that's just inherent. It's always going to be beautiful. Come from beautiful folks. The one that had been kicked is from my life, because I had been through a lot of shit. But even after all of that, it's still it's still made of gold, it's still filled with jewels, and it still means you get sovereignty over yourself. And I remember putting them both on my head, my chains disappeared, and I started running out of the pit. I was booking. I get to the top of the pit, and I look out, and on the other side, there's like literally all these like trees, and it goes down to this pristine beach with these beautiful oceans. And I'm about to take off, and I look back, and everybody's still stuck. And I was like, ah! And so I decided to go back and try to unstick people. And when I woke up, I had pretty much written that entire dream down. It just clicked with me, and I was like, all right, Khingz, because there's two crowns. I won't just be one, I'm two. There's Khingz. And then like a little bit after that, I moved to Brooklyn, and that was Kings County. And I had come from King County to Kings County, so it kind of just clicked in my head, and I was like, boom, it's over. And then Bean One is actually the one who gave it its spelling, because I spelled it Kings. And he was like, no, first of all, this is hip-hop. Put a Z in there. So he did that. And then he's like, I'm going to put a KH in there because of your real name. So, yeah. So a lot of it has to do with Bean One. Randomly. The first thing I feel like I ever put out after changing my name was going into Abyssinian Creole. I'd already dropped the record I did, Vitamin D, the Mi Vida Negra. I ended up moving to New York. Me and Gabriel Teodros, had already decided we wanted to make a group. And we represent literally both sides of our neighborhood, like whether it was like street or just like more of the everything that helps our neighborhood survive. It was like we felt like we represented all that. We're like, man, we got to make songs together. And we just like writing with each other. As a hip hop artist in Seattle, you had to fight to get a place to perform and to get people to come to the show. When I came back to do shows at Blue Scholars, it had gone from us doing like Northwest Asian American theater, right, to like, then I left. And then I came back and we did a show at UW. And it was like, okay, so now it's like, make 150 people, 200 people, cool. I leave, I move to California. And then I come back, and now we're at the Showbox. We got a lot of suburb fans. And they started coming into the city to see us and packing it out. And then after that, a lot of other Seattle people started being like, oh, this is cool now. And like, you know what I'm saying? And started coming to see more of the local artists. And it all happened kind of like quick. And all of a sudden we're at the Showbox. There's a line around the corner all the way to Target. And I'm like, who are these guys here to see? And I'm like, you. I was like, oh, that's crazy. It wasn't just Seattle. The entire West Coast was going through this independent renaissance. Started in the Bay and then went both directions. And now we're meeting other rappers up and down the West Coast. And there was literally this huge West Coast like renaissance that was happening. Fashion, shoes, the music. That era was interesting, and so we were kind of part of that whole thing. And that era, all that happening, it was kind of electric. You know, it was the first time underground hip hop in Seattle started dealing with the music industry in Seattle. That was different. That was like the music industry in Seattle was very much established with rock music. And us interacting now with this same machine, it was different, but they were into it because we were making them money. The Blue Scholars, I think it was 5 nights. They sold it out 5 nights in a row at Numos. That was crazy. There were people who bought tickets to go all 5 nights. That was crazy to me. I was like, yo, that's crazy. It was definitely multiple nights. I'm sure, I think I did the 3rd night or something like that. So I'm drinking something called a knee high. Knocked it back really fast because they called me to the stage, and I ran to the stage, and right when I got on there, it hit me. I tripped. I did a full flip, hopped up, grabbed the mic. I was like, let's go. Boom, we ran through my set super hard. I've seen a lot of people, including myself, hurt people who care about them a great deal because of their inability to face certain things. And I would do anything to not do that ever again. I will. I've accepted that. It sucks. But at least I hope that I'm able, through these tools that I have, to recognize it soon enough to be able to apologize or whatever. So, because I don't think people deserve that. And I feel a certain amount of shame over how much that's happened in my past. I got a lot of dead homies, and I love them to death. And at one point in my life, I thought protecting them meant being the wildest dude, whatever. And then I realized that the forces that are molding us into these decision making that we're making, and while we still have the ability to make our own decision, that there are things that are molding what decisions we even think are possible, and that is constantly leading to our destruction and our death. So for me, social justice is about trying to preserve the life of the people I care about, trying to see them be able to get older, see their children get older. And that plays into my music because that's a huge just part of who I am. Like for me, social justice is very much not a numbers thing. It is a very personal thing. Because my music is so personal, and because my folks, the people I'm connected to, are so affected by these things, I'm talking about it constantly. I feel like that's what I'm trying to tap into. And a lot of that also comes from my friendship with Gabe. Gabe also raps like that. He's very personal, very much vulnerable in his music, and I feel like there's a lot more men who are like that now, but back then, he was the only guy I had. That was it. Like, my only real male dude who was into, like, redefining what masculinity was and trying to, like, that. Like, he was it. So we clung to each other like we happened to be from the same neighborhood. It really worked out. Thanks God for that one. And his artistry and his support always helped help me push that aspect. And it's something that our friendship, I always say he's my longest running healthy relationship, my best friend who like literally has helped me become a better person. I can't ever make up for anything I've ever done wrong, but if I could positively impact the neighborhood that I negatively impacted, that I feel like that's the minimum that I can do. I made a lot of decisions out of desperation as a kid and on my own without someone that I could talk to. And I would like to be for someone else the person that I never had. Mm-hmm. So mentorship allows me to like interact with youth who are essentially in the same position I was in and be like, hey, you know, nothing has to end here. I just did not think I was going to get older. My 22nd birthday was the single most ridiculously overpowering existential crisis I have ever had in my life. Because I was supposed to die by 21. Turning 22, I had no clue what I was going to do in my life. people talk about life is short, and it is, it really is, but it's also like when you're not expecting to get older and it clicks in your head that you might get older, those years stretch out. They seem to stretch out forever. And you're just thinking, I have no plan. I have no plan for any of these years because I didn't think I was going to be here. The vast majority of my friends, they didn't make it. Like, I would say 70% of the homies I came up with are like, they're dead. And then there's another, like, I don't know, 10 or 15% who are just like, when they get out of jail, I'll be 55 for the youngest. And then I got homies that might get out of jail and I'm like in my 60s. I had a homie that got killed, this Khmer dude. And I remember his mom at his funeral just like hysterical, and my homie's translating what she's saying, and he's basically saying like she took him from the killing fields, like literally, and he died here where he was supposed to be safe, like the safest city in America. Why did he die here? And like, it just like those kind of things had me really thinking like, yo, what are we doing? Like, what are we doing? You know, like there's always this feeling that nobody really cares about you, but then it's not always that true. You know, people have their different traumas, and like, you know, he had issues with his mom, you know, like, but in the end, she really did care about him, and he went out thinking that the only people who cared about him was us, you know. And I don't know, man, something about that just, I don't know, broke my heart. It broke my heart, and like I couldn't get over it. I still haven't gotten over it. It like, I don't know, it plays on me. I think about that all the time. I would say this, as an older head, as a 45-year-old hip-hop head to like young folks making this music, I'm very, very grateful and appreciative and like just in your debt. There's like so much of my artistry that and so much of my personal freedom has come out of seeing how these next generations take this art and use it in different ways, and I appreciate y'all. There was a time in my 20s where I was super like, hip-hop's dying and it's dead. But as I have expanded my view and traveled and met people from around the world, I know for a fact that kind of hip-hop, as in like the liberatory, self-expressive, is never going to die. It's always living somewhere. You go to some spot and there'll be some 13-year-old kids bumping like Low End Theory. Like, where'd you find that? It's just on Spotify. All right, word. Don't even know that it came out in the 90s. They're just like, this is dope. I mess with this. You know, it's like, okay, there's always going to be people that are into different stuff, but this core, this is never going to go away. I always go back to that Mos Def quote. People ask me, how's the culture doing? Like I say, how are the people doing? Because it's how the people are doing that is going to dictate how the culture goes. And so, again, going back to mentorship and social justice, and I feel like, honestly, the best thing that I can do for hip-hop as a culture that helped raise me and being a very positive part of my life is to work to make the world a better place for people to be better, because our culture will then also be better. I mean, like, I might not like it, but that doesn't mean that it's not helping somebody survive.